This week was all about the anchored VWAP handoff. So essentially an anchored VWAP handoff is essentially when you anchor from a pivot here, a swing low, and you can see anytime the price touches or breaches this area, this is a really good example here on November 10th, you anchor another VWAP from that point. So you can see here, we anchor from the original point, we do a handoff anchored VWAP here, starting another VWAP, and then once we touch that VWAP once again, this was the last time that we tested this area, so we want to anchor one from here. This is handoff 2, and you can see how well price has been respecting this general area over the last 2 days.
This is the How to Trade Stocks and Options podcast, brought to you by 10MinuteStockTrader.com, where we cover finance, stocks, options, entrepreneurship, education, and money. And here's your host, voted one of the top 100 people in finance, Christopher Ewell. Today's episode is produced in partnership with Trendspider. Get scanning, charts, backtesting, and alerts all in one place with Trendspider. Go to trendspider.10MinuteStockTrader.com to get an exclusive discount code and bonuses worth over $100 when you take your free trial at trendspider.10MinuteStockTrader.com. Hey, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified every time we give you more tools, tips, and tricks to help you trade faster and trade smarter every single week.
Everybody, Jake here with Trendspider to go over the weekend video going over the broad markets and quite a few individual names into next week. So let's jump right in and get started on SPY. As you can see on SPY, we did test this support area below. Remember, it's only support once it proves itself, as that's something Brian Shannon really taught me. I remember I used to talk about support as if price was definitely going to bounce there, but for now it is bouncing there. So let's see what happens going into next week. We also have the weekly chart here. We did try to break out of the broadening formation, which we did close above the resistance last week, but then had some trouble going into this week, and we're kind of stuck right at that area. So let's see what happens going into next week. And then this week was all about the anchored VWAP handoff. So essentially an anchored VWAP handoff is essentially when you anchor from a pivot here, a swing low, and you can see anytime the price touches or breaches this area, this is a really good example here on November 10th, you anchor another VWAP from that point. So you can see here, we anchor from the original point, we do a handoff anchored VWAP here, starting another VWAP, and then once we touch that VWAP once again, this was the last time that we tested this area, so we want to anchor one from here. This is handoff 2, and you can see how well price has been respecting this general area over the last 2 days. Today is Friday, so Thursday and Friday both had days that they were really kind of finding a little bit of support right around this area. Now, on the weekly side of things, we have technically just broken out of an ascending triangle, and we're just retesting that area that we broke out of. So nothing too crazy there for now. Let's see what happens going into the rest of the year. IWM is one that really had some trouble this week, just kind of pretty much stuck, and kind of the rest of the market was like that too. But with IWM, we're getting very close to either breaking through or breaking down through this ascending wedge that's forming. We also have 4 weeks in a row that we've closed green here. We did break out of that longer term resistance zone on the weekly in early November, and we're still going for now. It would be healthy probably to get some type of pullback here, and a strong pullback would be possibly to retest this breakout zone, which would be quite a drop, but still healthy, honestly. So let's see what happens going into next week. And then we have VIX, which actually did hold on relatively well this week. We actually did not hit a new low on VIX, so that's something to keep in mind. We did bounce a little bit. We still have this gap below, so we'll just have to see what happens going into the week ahead. Now, going into these individual names, we have Facebook to start off with. We're going to do FANG, and then we're going to do quite a few others. And you'll see a recurring thing here. A lot of anchored VWAP handoff setups on both the broad markets and these individual names. So Facebook is not one of those examples, but wanted to mention that before we got started into the individual names. We have the symmetrical triangle that has just constantly been testing this potential support below. Once again on Friday, today we bounced right off of it again. You can see here if we do look at the weekly, you can see the symmetrical triangle a little better. And then if we anchor the volume by price from the March lows, you can really see that we have this massive volume shelf forming here, which essentially means there's just a lot of shares holding at this area, and a majority of shares right now are really just holding at break even within this shelf. So will supply dry up and demand take over? We'll have to see, but for now we're just kind of stuck near the apex of the symmetrical triangle. Going into Apple, Apple's one that initially started the week pretty well, and then just with the overall market had a pullback, and we're within this ascending triangle now. And on the weekly side of things, you can see we pretty much double topped here, which is shown by this ascending triangle resistance. And we are still kind of holding above this volume shelf here. And remember, we're anchoring from this March low. You can see there's a lot of shares holding here. Now there are quite a few people that are holding at a little bit of a profit, but not a lot considering that a majority of shares are holding from around 112 to around 117. So will this be a leader going into next week? Let's see what happens. Now, Amazon is one that definitely looks very similar kind of to Facebook here, where we're just stuck in this symmetrical triangle. And you can see here pretty much the same exact setup here on the weekly side of things. We have this huge volume shelf forming. We have the March lows as the anchor point for the volume by price. If we anchor a VWAP from this bottom point here, you can see the average price per share paid is still way down in the 2,700 area. So there are still quite a few shares holding, or there's still quite a bit of profit holding from the average price per share paid. So if we did break down, this would be a level of interest below around 2,750 or so. Going into Netflix, Netflix had a decent week actually, had a better week than most of the other FANG stocks. And you can see here that we are still stuck right at this alpha trends anchored VWAP from the swing high. We are trying to get through this area. Notice what I've done here is I have the original anchored VWAP, but then I added an offset here because there were times where the price action did break through and then pulled right back down. So you can see that multiple times here. And so I just adjusted for that using the percentage offset. So to do that, you just right click, go to properties, go to percentage bands, and then you can offset with whatever percent you want. I did 2.5% above the original anchored VWAP, and that's how we come up with this more shaded area. Going on to the weekly chart, you can see here that we do have this huge volume shelf forming as well. We bounced off of it. We have that symmetrical triangle pretty much like every other FANG stock right now, other than Google. Google is one that is kind of doing its own thing. We did get rejected right at this ascending wedge resistance this week, and you can see that here on the weekly side of things. And then on the daily side of things, you can see here that the volume shelf did exactly what it was supposed to. Remember, the volume shelf is just something that is shown when using the anchored volume by price. So this particular indicator is not called the volume shelf. It's called the anchored volume by price. The reason why we call it the anchored is because you can move this around and decide where you want to start this point. As I mentioned before, I like to start these at the swing low. You can see that a majority of shares were holding right at this volume shelf, and likely what happened was supply dried up. Any type of buying came in, pushed the price up. Now, going into next week, we'll really have to see what happens. Let's anchor a VWAP from this high point here. So really, let's say around 1,800 would be the area to watch to see if we break through that next week, and then we can go from there. Now, moving on to RKT. This is one that I find interesting simply because we have this massive inverse head and shoulders here. You can see it on both the daily side of things here, and then you can see it a little better on the weekly side of things here with really just since August, just a huge move down. And so we're pretty far down compared to where we were a few months ago. So this is definitely something to keep in mind. The main thing I'd be watching for is possibly a breakout through this resistance area here. We did test that area pretty closely this week, but then pulled back. So let's see what happens going into the week ahead. Next one is PLTR. This is another Alpha Trends anchored VWAP handoff case study this week. So same thing here. In this case, we anchored the VWAP from the breakout candle. You can see that we tested this breakout anchored VWAP here on December 2nd. So then we anchor another VWAP here. This is the handoff point, and you can see how well price respected this area over the last couple days on Thursday and Friday. Now, on the weekly side of things, there's not a lot of candles to look at. So the main thing I wanted to show here was since the beginning of November, this is up 162%. So definitely something to consider. We are up quite a bit. However, this is just a very strong recent IPO, and let's see what happens. It doesn't mean that it has to drop. It just means that it is up quite a bit so far and clearly showing some strength. CRWD is another anchored VWAP handoff case study here from this week. You can see here, same thing, anchor the VWAP here, and then you can see here we anchor another VWAP from this handoff point. This was a fun one to play a week or so ago after we tested this area and then had earnings, a nice gap up. And then you can see the price action has respected this handoff anchored VWAP perfectly over the last week. And so let's see what happens going into next week. But all in all, we do have a gap below from earnings, which is something to consider. But this is really showing some strength. The main thing would be to break through this long-term resistance point here, which we've tested multiple times over the last year or two. or I guess year. And this would be a crucial area to break through going into the end of the year. Going into Tesla, this is one that had quite both moves to the upside and the downside this week. Same thing as we talked about before with PLTR. We have this area that previously was resistance. Once we broke out with this big candle here, that's where we want to anchor the VWAP. You can see that we've tested this area multiple times. So here, and then here again on Thursday. For now, we kind of closed on an inside day for Friday, and for now, it's just kind of hanging out within this general range. But on the weekly side of things, we did break out of this ascending triangle. It would be pretty healthy to come back and retest this zone, but knowing Tesla could easily just continue to moon higher. Last one we're going to look at is Zoom. Zoom is one that is very interesting with potentially a double bottom forming here. The main kicker is the fact that we have a gap below and a gap above. So there are kind of two areas that bulls and bears are battling, either to the upside or downside. But the main thing I want to point out here is the fact that we are holding still on this longer term area of support since June, and this is something that we pointed out last week, and price seems to be respecting it for now. So that is all for this weekend's video. If you have any questions, please comment below. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. We do these every weekend, and you can try out Trendspider for free. We have a 7-day free trial that you can try out without any obligation on your end, and then just make sure to cancel that trial subscription before it ends if you decide not to move forward. However, there are a lot of things you can use using Trendspider and getting an edge in the market, so we do recommend checking it out. You have nothing to lose, and hopefully this video was helpful for everybody watching. Everybody have a great weekend, and happy trading into next week.
Okay, so what'd you think? That was pretty incredible, right? Now, if you like that, that's only a taste, only a sample of what you're going to find in the full AI stock trading system. And I really highly encourage you to go and check this out. Obviously, you are interested in learning and how to trade, and that's why you're listening to this podcast. Now, I'm going to take and download my entire trading system that I use day in and day out onto you. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is over at the AIStockTradingSystem.com. You're going to get phase 1, 2, and 3, several bonuses, and on top of that, I'm going to walk you through over a dozen trades that I put on inside of my account, holding your hand and showing you exactly how I got in, how I got out, how I use the artificial intelligence data, and how this could work inside of your own trading portfolio on a daily basis. So make sure you head on over to AIStockTradingSystem.com. That's AIStockTradingSystem.com to learn more and to get started and to download my decade plus worth of trading experience into your hands so you can start using the AI stock trading system today, the 5-step system to take the guesswork out of trading. Hey, if you like this video, let me know by leaving me a like below, and then subscribe and share it with somebody you think could use it as well. Be sure to comment below with your biggest takeaway from this episode and any suggestions you have for future episodes. And finally, make sure you watch these other videos to help you trade faster and trade smarter, and I'll see you on the next episode.